Okay, welcome to part 2 of the Beginner City tutorial. In this clip, or in this part, we're going to create some terrain, which is basically like the land that sort of makes up the world that your city is based in. We're going to put in some mountains, put in some grass, put in some trees, and sort of start to create that world. This is also going to involve us using the asset store, which is Unity's store where you can import ready-to-go assets that can make your game much easier. There are paid and free. We're only going to use free ones for this video. Okay, so let's start by going into the asset store and get a few things ready that we're going to need for our terrain building. So I've got the asset store already showing up here as a tab next to scene, but I think by default it's only scene and game. So to switch on the asset store, you can go up to Window at the top here and then click Asset Store, and then it will come up like this. It's telling you that the asset store has moved. You used to be able to view the asset store right in Unity, but now you have to click this Search Online button and it will basically open that up in your browser. So here it comes. Okay, so here's the asset store, and there's some advertisements for some lots of cool things. There are search functions down the side here, and you can also switch on to only see free assets if you want to as well. So we're going to need some terrain tools. So I'm going to search that, terrain tools, and also turn on only free. So there are two that I found that I liked. Basically this one from Unity Technologies called Terrain Tools Sample Asset Pack, and then this one called Makia, published by Makia, called Terrain Tools. And I installed both of these, and then I kind of forgot which one comes from which pack. So just to be safe for this tutorial, let's use both of these. So if you find one that you want to install, obviously it's grayed out because I've already done that. So you just click on it, or click on the name. Okay, you can see what is included in this pack. They'll normally put some screenshots and some explanation of what you get. And then it's as simple as just clicking on Open in Unity. I'll take you back to Unity in the Package Manager. Okay, it's going to load up that package. My computer is pretty slow. Okay, there we go. So it's opened up in Unity. Now, I've already downloaded this, but if you haven't, you would have to first click that download button. It'll take a few minutes as there'll be a loading bar here, and then once it's finished downloading, it will let you import. So import will bring it into this project. And then obviously you're going to have to do the same for the other one as well. There was those two that I showed before. Terrain Tools and then Terrain Tools Sample Assets Pack. Okay, so these are already downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and import. This can take a little bit longer than, probably longer than the download does actually. So I might just skip through this. But basically, once you hit that, it's going to come up with everything selected, and you can, I just want to keep everything, so I'm just going to leave everything on and hit import. I don't really know what this means, but just go ahead. Okay, and you should do the same with the other one as well. Right, so now that I've got those tools imported, you will now see down in the assets window down the bottom that there's all these things now showing up in materials and models, and we're going to use some of these when we start to build our terrain. Okay, so let's create a terrain. So we can go into the hierarchy here, hit the plus button, go to 3D object and select terrain. And that has plonked a terrain right in the middle of my world over here. So let's go over it to zoom into it and see what's going on here. Okay, here it is. So this is a nice big terrain that will be plenty large enough to fit mountain ranges, an entire city, some water features, all that good stuff. Okay, but currently it's just a plain tile, just a giant square basically, which is pretty boring. We probably want to create some sort of interesting features in there. So we can do that over here. So if you've got the terrain selected, over in the inspector, we can start to see our options. Okay, so right here under terrain, there are a couple of different features we can use, and the paintbrush here is probably what's going to be the most useful. There's a few different things we can paint onto this. So we're going to start by painting the raise or lower terrain, and this is pretty self-explanatory. As we draw, we're going to be kind of raising like a mountain range essentially, right? And then if you want to lower it back down, you just hold shift while you click, and that will kind of shrink it back down. So yeah, so you can design however you would like your mountain range to be. This kind of speckled brush works really well, but probably so would any kind of textured brush. The kind of plain circles or sort of hexagon, I mean, you can see why that's not going to work, because it's not very natural looking, unless there was a particular reason why you needed that. Generally speaking, you're gonna get a more realistic, rocky kind of look if you're using these speckled brushes. So yeah, so I quite like to have kind of like a mountain range in sort of one corner, maybe a couple of really kind of big feature mountains or something like that, and then also leaving plenty of empty space. So you're going to want a little bit of flat space to design your city on as well. Having some area that's just totally flat is going to make it a lot easier to do roads and things without kind of clipping into the land. So this looks quite nice to me. I think I'm going to go ahead and use this. Maybe a little bit more on the mountains there. And yeah, that's looking nice. And if I kind of go right down to the small level, you can see what it's probably going to look like as a character walking around in this world. So that's looking nice. Okay, but currently you can see that it's just got this checker plate kind of whatever texture. It doesn't have any kind of color. It's just gray, and we want it to look like rocks or like grass or something like that, right? So we also can paint on some materials. Materials are basically the color and the texture of an object, right? Taking away from just being plain gray. And so we also use the paintbrush for this as well. So we can still be in the paintbrush mode, but we're going to change the drop-down box over to paint texture. And currently you'll see terrain layers, and there's no layers here, but there is a button that says edit terrain layers. So basically what's going to happen here is we're going to add the different types of terrain material that we want. So for example, I probably kind of want all of this area to be kind of grass, but then I want to use like a rock kind of material for the mountains up here. And so we can select two different things, and we can paint the different areas to be whichever one we wanted. The one that you select first is so the first one that we create, when we go into edit terrain layers and hit create layer, the first one is going to basically fill the entire thing. So everything's going to, if I select grass now, which I'm going to, everything is going to look like grass to start with. And then I'll add another layer which will be rocks, and I'll have to paint the rocks onto those areas. So whichever one you go with first will cover everything, and then you can paint on. So if you only want a little bit of rock, don't choose rock first, because then you're going to have to spend a long time painting the grass. But if you want mostly grass, then pick that first. Okay, create layer. And I am going to select a texture, and I'm going to go with, I think it's just called grass or forest floor or something like that. Here we go, forest floor. So I'm going to pick this one. And you can see this one has forest floor and then forest floor normals. So normals is basically like an extra kind of file that gives your material some sort of some height and some depth, like a texture. So rather than just being a color, it'll also appear kind of bumpy and as if it has texture, which looks really nice. So I'm going to choose this one because it has a normals. So forest floor. I think I have to double click that. Nice. So that's showing up, and everything has turned into grass, as you can see. But if I zoom right in here, you can see the tiling effect, which doesn't look very good. Okay, I don't want to see all these tiles everywhere, especially if I'm down here as a character. I'm going to notice that it's just like a pattern repeating. And basically, that's because the file is the terrain is too small, the way that it's kind of copying. But we can change that. So if I select the grass and then go to tiling settings, it's currently set at 2. I could make that, say, for example, 50, and it's going to make it way larger. And of course, from this kind of God's view at the moment, I can still see those tiles. But if you imagine as a character who would be zoomed in down to probably like this level, okay, now you can't really notice the patterns. It looks like it's kind of just infinite. And this is looking quite nice, actually. So it looks good. You don't want to go too big, because then you'll be walking around on like giant grass. But yeah, I think that could work, or maybe even slightly smaller would work too. Also, I was talking about normals before. So when I selected this terrain layer, there is an option here to create normals, which we can because this file does have a normal. So I'll show you what that looks like. So currently, here's the grass, and you can see that it just kind of looks like it's kind of a fake painting onto it. But if I select normals and go to what's called forest floor normals, there it is, and double click that, and well, probably not a huge difference noticeable on this, but other ones like, oh, here we go, that works. You can see there's kind of this bumpiness and shading to it as well. So that's going to make it look a little bit more realistic. You'll see the effect even greater when we use the rocks. See it again here where there's some shadows and stuff. So that's nice. Okay, now let's add some rocks. So we're going to paint a rock effect onto these mountains up here. So again, go to Edit Terrain Layer, Add Layer, and I'm going to choose rock. Not really sure why I don't see all the options on this one, but anyway, let's go with rock. Don't click that. I think this one, for some reason, automatically brings in the normals map, which is nice. Okay, and then I've got this giant paintbrush. I'm going to make my paintbrush a little smaller so I can paint some detail. Okay, and now I'm going to just paint a rock onto these mountains that I'm using. So I've got my mountains, but now they are becoming kind of rocky because mountains are normally not covered in grass. Okay, and that can look quite nice. And if I zoom right in, you can see that normals effect. So I think if I were to turn off normals for a moment, maybe I can't do that. Yeah, there you go. That's the difference. So that's what it looks like with no normals. That's just the kind of just the color, basically. But then if we put on the normals, we get also kind of detail. Maybe even you could play around with the different scale, how much effect you want. But yeah, it begins to look really quite nice. Cool, and then that's it. I mean, look at that. We've already kind of basically got a mountain range happening. and I could spend some more time doing that. I could even add another layer and put like some snow on the top of some of those mountains as well. But we're really looking quite nice here. All right, the last thing I want to cover, I'm going to do this quickly because I have a class coming very soon, is painting on trees. So you can also use the terrain tools to paint trees. So for this, I'm going to come out of the paintbrush, go to trees, and it's asking us, we basically click to paint trees, but I don't have any trees set up yet. So it says here, no trees defined. So let's edit trees, add trees. And I need to select a tree here. So there's a bunch in that come in with those packages that we imported before. Let's go with thin tree. I'm not really sure what that looks like. And then here we can change our brush, so have a larger brush so we can paint larger areas. But then also the tree density, which is going to be like how many trees it paints at one time. So this will allow you to basically paint in a forest. You need to be a little bit, I'm not sure why I can't get any trees at the moment. You need to be just a little aware that as you paint in those trees, you're going to be adding quite a lot of detail to your map, to your level. So you could very quickly create so many things that your city file is going to start to crash or something. Oh, here we go. So there we go. I'm painting in, and you could just see that instant slowdown as I paint these in, and look at it's already getting really slow, but it does look amazing. In fact, those are probably way too many trees. Again, you can use Shift to remove them, and then slide the density down so it'll do less trees at a time. And there you go, you painted an entire forest in a couple of seconds. So I'm going to say I want a forest on this side of my world. Let's turn the tree density right down, and then just drop a couple here and there, the mountains. Okay, and that's looking good.